Welcome. So we'll get started and just general welcome. Happy to have you all here again today. It's always great to have everybody. I was saying earlier when just a few of us were here that I'm so glad. I think Marika, Caitlin, Mega, Nikki, we're all really pleased and that people are participating and coming to these sessions. So as you saw in the agenda or the info I sent out yesterday, we're going to talk about after Belgrade. I'm so excited. It gives us a discussion of their project. We're going to talk about troubleshooting strategies, which is one of the things that got added to the resource feedback form, and really thinking about how you all are strategizing about the things you're working on when you run into roadblocks and getting feedback from other people on that. But before we do that, I'm gonna ask Sarah and Aaron to take the stage, so to speak, and tell us about your project, ask questions, whatever you're thinking, go for it.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So Aaron's not able to be with us today, unfortunately, but he and I went through a few items over the past few days. Belgrade Library, our project was called Game on Coding, or Graduation Matters Game on Coding Club, and we invited middle schoolers, 6th through 8th grade, to participate in a Google CS First club. So that was our platform. We did everything through CS First and Scratch, and then part of what made ours different was we had mentors from the local university, Montana State University, come and help mentor the kids. So they were like the subject matter experts, or they knew more about troubleshooting. If we ran out of ability to answer questions, they were there. So we had 6 mentors, and they ranged in degree from there was a math education major, and then computer science and computer engineering. So we also invited them to, excuse me, present on some of their research, so the kids could get a taste for what real life applications of computer science look like. So it was their research, it was their backgrounds and their experiences, and then sharing it with the kids in a way that made sense for them. So we had some, definitely some troubleshooting issues. So we had 16 spots open in the club. At the start of it, we had 16 signups, but it ended up with 13 graduating from the club, essentially, where they got their completed passport, and they attended the showcase, which was last Thursday. So I'm not sure how many people have used CS First platform yet, but the students go through and they watch a video in between each coding step. And that's how it's set up, so they know what they're doing and they know what the goal of each piece of the code is. They get that background information, and they get just some helpful how-tos and step-by-step instruction. With 15, what ended up being 13 laptops running on our Wi-Fi, we ran into a lot of problems with the connection. So it was frustrating for a lot of the kids to have to wait for buffering because everything's so instantaneous now. We got around it a little bit by buying a new router and having that upstairs in our meeting room instead of just relying on the normal library Wi-Fi. And then after that didn't really fix the problem, we started watching the videos all together as a group. So it was a good opportunity to check in with the whole group and say, all right, we're gonna, you finish that step, let's move on to the next one. Are there any questions? We could more easily check in with the kids than when they were trying to do it by themselves, because there were some that were skipping videos and then they were confused, but we didn't realize they'd skip videos and things like that. Other than that, we had good feedback. Everybody was really excited. We didn't open it up to new members after the first week. We just left it at the number that we had, and that gave everybody an opportunity to go through all of the clubs or the sessions together. So then they got kind of more camaraderie and more of an opportunity to meet with the MSU mentors. So after each club session was over and they did their reflection, one of the mentors would present on their research or their work that they were doing. So we had someone from the Borealis experiment come in and talk about, she helped design the, cannot think of the name of them, the mechanisms that went up and into atmosphere to take pictures of the eclipse, which was really cool. And she did a lot of the work on the Raspberry Pi computers that controlled them. So that was really fun to see. And then another 2 students work on sound, which will be helpful for this summer reading program because it's Libraries Rock. So they're already like kind of gearing up to help us with a program for that, but they were using Raspberry Pis to make sound and then see and show the kids how as you move around or as the Raspberry Pi moves around, the sound changes. And then a follow-up to that was one of the students makes music videos, and so the sounds that they made in the first session got carried over and they all made music videos for that sound. So that was really fun too. And that was a little bit of an extra thing we did. So last Thursday was our, yes, drone, thank you. Last Thursday was our showcase, and it was an opportunity for the kids and their families to come and show off what they did. So when I mentioned this last time with what I'm stressing out about, it was suggested that I record it, and I do have that, so I'll be uploading that. It was about an hour long, and we split up the kids into 3 different groups of about 4 or 5 each, and they chose one project to present, but each of them answered questions. And I have the questions in front of me. So what we did was we had the final mentor presentation, because it was related to students doing work on a website to help high school kids get ready for college. Like, what questions do you have? What keeps coming up as a resource? And then we had one of the teams present, and then we had another presenter. But the questions for the kids were that they had to practice explaining the instructions for the game and prepare to have one of their parents play the game on the projector. So it was going to actually be played. It wasn't just going to be, this is what we did. It's like, okay, well come on up, mom and dad, and we'll make you play this against each other and see who can get through it first or win. And so that was good that they had to practice. If it wasn't their game, they had to practice presenting information that they weren't as familiar with, which I thought was good. We asked them what the key concepts were that they learned in the game that they presented. And we used the Google CS First script and the passports to help them remember that. We asked them what their favorite part of making the game was and why. A lot of it had to do with changing the costumes and backgrounds of the sprites. So that was fun to see, like, who really liked the coding and who really liked the artistic side, which might give us more information for next time. We asked them what they struggled with and how they overcame it, and what were 3 things that they would tell their friends to convince them to join the club. So that was interesting too, to hear, like, they really like video games, so it's really cool to be able to build your own. Like, that was one of my favorite answers. And then after that, or in between each presenter club or team, we had an outside speaker. So we had someone from Montana State University admissions come in, and he presented on things that students and parents can do to prepare for college, even though it seems like a long way away for a middle schooler. And he handed out some helpful information just like on MSU admissions, and I'll probably scan this and share it in the program resources. But it tells a little bit about like incoming stats and demographics and test scores. And he just reiterated that if you are thinking about going to college, it's really helpful, it's not just the junior and senior year that are important, it's the freshman and sophomore year, because that's where you build momentum. There was good feedback from the parents saying, yeah, that's right. And the kids are like, yeah, okay. And then we had Rhonda from the Gallatin College, which is the Montana State University's community college part. And she was the information technology program director. So that was really cool. And she teaches IT classes at that college. So it was really cool to see, hear what some legitimate like IT classes are like from a person that teaches them. And we had, I think we had about an even number of girls and boys in the club. So she was thrilled to see all the girls and how excited they were to participate in this. And then it just gave them a little more information about like what they could expect if they go into IT, like what kind of classes. And yes, they used Scratch, but there's so many other things, and this is how they could use those things. And then finally we had a person from the industry come in. So this gentleman, he worked at Wisetail, and now he's part of Alchemy Systems, which is Wisetail's parent company. And he presented on his work, his day-to-day work, and what it's like to work for an IT company or a computer science company. And they're building Lego. Am I unloaded? Am I unmuted? Okay. So it's like Lego robots, and using code to make things move through a maze, and like bowling with a round, like a ball, but it was with a computer inside of it. So it could be the most precise bowling you've ever done, because it can do it the same way every time. So he showed a little bit of that work, and he's willing to come back and do a more in-depth presentation at the library, which I think would be kind of cool, if nothing else. If it's not for the same kids, it'll be like an interesting program. And then we provided more information to the students and their parents about opportunities in middle school and high school for getting more into computer science. So there are some clubs that they could join, and we gave them that contact information. There's internship opportunities with the IT department in their middle school and high school, that if they're serious about this, they can get paid for it starting now, which is kind of cool. And it's a little different in that it's more like tech related in terms of helping with productions and plays and PA systems, but it's a good entryway point. I think that's all I had. Are there any questions? I have not been looking. Yeah.
Questions in the chat or voice? And thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Quite a lot going on.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Who's gonna?
I just unmuted myself. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Did you do the same Google CS First kit with all the kids, or did you allow them some choice on which CS First kit they were going to do?
We knew that some of the kids might have been exposed to the gaming one previously, but it ended up just being like very, very little amount in an after school program. And we wanted them to be working on the same thing at the same time. So we did have 3 options available, but we ended up going with gaming because that was what the kids wanted to do. We had social media and sports ready to go though. And actually gaming is like considered the hardest one, or like highest level of coding. So that was kind of cool to see. Maybe, some kids were like, this wasn't easy, this wasn't easy. Like it took a lot to get into it. And some of them were like, this is way too easy. So it was kind of cool to see that difference too. Charlene, I see your question. So what resources did you use to find the local groups for the kids? I reached out to the United Way in our county, and he has access to the after school program there. And through that, their contacts, they got us in touch with all of the middle school and high school counselors, and the counselors were the ones that gave us the information for the clubs that they could join. And yes, Mandy, we had the same kids every time. A few of them didn't make it to all of them, but we wanted it to be at least the same group for this first round. And we're planning on doing another one, which I think we'll probably do another same group the whole time, but it might be aimed at a little bit younger, because we heard from the kids in like 3rd through 5th grade that they were really mad that they couldn't participate. So, and then younger siblings. And then that actually gives us an opportunity to have the students that participated in this first club act as peer mentors, which they were all really excited about, because they want to be able to share their experience and share their expertise and excitement about this coding opportunity. And especially if it's their siblings, that might be pretty interesting. Anything else?
Anybody else? Great. Well, thank you, Sarah. And sorry, Erin couldn't be here, but really appreciate that you took it on your own.
Here we go. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome. Sounds like an amazing program. Marika, go.
I have a question. Sorry. So you might not know the answer. I was curious about your Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because it's kind of auxiliary to the actual coding stuff. But do you have, what is your kind of square footage size, and do you know what your broadband speeds are, or how many drops you have?
So Aaron would be the person to answer that. He's our tech administrator.
Okay.
We have right now, our library is like 9,500 maybe square feet.
Okay.
And the more difficult part of this is that we were meeting in the upstairs meeting room, which is where I am right now. And that's like the furthest point from our main
Right.
router. So,
okay.
yeah, but I can ask Aaron to get you that.
Yeah, or I can ask him too on the
Sure,
community
yeah.
practice. Do you know if you apply for E-rate?
We do not.
You don't. Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marika. Anybody else? Here you go, Nikki and Marika. Networked minds all together. Great. So we're gonna move on to our theme for today, which actually fits with a lot of what you were talking about. Thank you for that, Sarah. And actually even the drops and Wi-Fi and broadband and E-rate, all of that is part of strategizing and troubleshooting. So we wanted to give everybody the chance to talk about some of the challenges you're facing, how you're overcoming them, and even ask each other for thoughts, support, feedback, advice. And we're going to do this very informally. I thought just this morning, Kristen, I don't know if you saw it, posted on our discussion forum about the challenge they're facing with recruitment and particularly keeping kids coming. So I thought that was interesting, Sarah, that you said that your group pretty much stayed the same with a few people missing a couple. So that's one thing we can talk about. But did someone come in with something very that you're challenged by at this moment that you would like some feedback, or that you have figured out a way of overcoming that challenge? Who wants to jump in? Oh, all right. Mandy has a question for those targeting girls. Mandy, do you have a mic? I can't remember.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because it wasn't working in another web meeting. My question is for those who have groups that they're really targeting girls, how do they address any customers who are not girls that would like to do the program? We took the approach because 2 of our sites are for girls. We didn't put girls only. We don't want to sound exclusive. We worded it that it's a site, it's a program for girls to celebrate women in STEM and careers and kind of target. And we just put in there, it's heavily, the content is heavily includes those kind of themes. But if any males or any boys or anyone who identifies a different way came forward, our staff were instructed not to turn them away, but to just make sure they understand that the content is for girls. I was curious because we set that up and then those questions arose as we were going into marketing and we had to figure out how to word it. I was curious how other people addressed that if they were targeting girls.
We're targeting girls too. And some of our programs do have girls in the name. I was actually just discussing this. We're trying to decide if we want to keep that or not. Because on the one hand, girls won't show up sometimes if girls isn't in the name. But on the other hand, I kind of feel like we're perpetuating the problem if we have to say like, oh, coders aren't girls unless we say coder girls. So it's something we're still discussing. For this program, we called it Mighty Girl Coders because we have a few other programs like our Mighty Girls Book Club and our Mighty Maker Girls that bring in female mentors from different fields that relate to whatever topic we're doing. And so this time we called it Mighty Maker Girls and just kind of made the branding and advertising a little bit more feminine, Mighty Coder Girls. And then just made sure that everybody knew that boys were still more than welcome to attend. We've had 1 boy each session, and he's been fitting right in and doing a great job collaborating with everybody. And I'm excited that we have him as part of the group. But going forward, I'm actually calling my programs manager later today to decide if in our spring run, we're going to call it Mighty Coders or Mighty Girl Coders. And so it's something we're still struggling with over here too. So there's my input.
Hey, Laura, you had something too, right?
Yes, yeah, and I agree with everyone. So what we're working on, because we have, it's open to both males and females. And what I found is that my males obviously are really into the gaming. So that's an easy avenue with them. But with my females who weren't necessarily into gaming or into, say, Minecraft, for example, I just found the avenue that fits them. So for example, one of my African-American girls, she said, yeah, I'm not into what the guys are working on. And I said, that's fine. And so we sat down and had a discussion because we're working on Python. And we had a discussion and I tried to get, what are your interests? What are you into? And she's really into fashion. So what she's working on is she's developing a book bag using Python code that has all wearable technologies on it. So what's great is that we're working through, hers is totally different, but we're working through soldering, we're working through wearable electronics, we're working through some basic 3D printing. It's become more of a, we work through the process. And so she has this Under Armour book bag that we're totally retrofitting and she's designing and programming. And then another one of my girls is really into the social aspect. And so I'm working with her on Twilio and she's developing a text-based app. So I kind of went through and targeted what their interests are, because then that's their passion is going to lead to them working through the problems that they're going to face with the coding.
Juan, what's your question about the wearable technology thing?
Yeah, when you say that they're working through wearable technology and soldering and all of that, is that, and then you mentioned Python, so is that a hands-on workshop? Are they working through building a project with e-textiles, or what does that look like?
Yes. So I wish I could say it's formatted, perfectly, but it's almost every day I'm adjusting as based on their needs. But when I say working through, what I mean is, so she worked on Python and Arduino, and then what we did is, as she came up with problems. So for example, we were able to connect her LEDs and get the colors to work based upon, for example, temperature. And we also used a circuit playground, which is great. And so with that, then I said, okay, so we have it connected via alligator clips. So what do we need to do then to get it on your book bag? So when I say working through, well, then she realized, oh, well, we need to get thread. Well, is regular thread going to work, or what kind of thread do we need? Well, we need conductive thread. And so that's what I mean by working through. It's more, I'm trying to set up, small challenges that she has to think through, and then kind of research, well, what's the next step, without me saying this is the answer. But I'm barely a step ahead of her. I'm just learning. I'm barely a step ahead of her.
That's awesome. Charlene has a question that people are talking about in the chat related to working with community and getting, Charlene, I think you said specifically engineers, but do people have, where is it? And Charlene, do you have voice? I can't remember. Do you have audio?
I have audio, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So you want to tell us what your troubleshooting is right now, what your problem is?
So I don't know if you know, but we are working on a farm bot. It's like a robotic gardener, and the part of the grant was to have the teens work with local engineers. And the next 2 weekends, they are going to be building the farm bot, and we thought it'd be great for them to have experience with engineers. Since the beginning of December, we have sent out letters, emails to engineers. You can talk to friends of some people, and the worst part is we had some people say, oh yeah, I'd love to do it, but then they never have come back and committed to a date or a time frame on the weekends. So we're kind of in a lull at this point.
Thanks. Anybody have some thoughts for Charlene?
I was just going to say we're kind of coming into that same issue. I'm not the one who's doing the contacting, but the one who is currently out on the front desk, so he wasn't able to attend. He's getting the same sort of runaround. Somebody's like, oh, that is a great idea, I'd love to come, and then he presents them with dates, and they're like, either there's no response, or I can't do any of those dates responses, which is really frustrating. We finally got somebody to agree, but I've been keeping my eyes on the chat, and I'm going to suggest to him getting in contact with HR and looking into volunteer work days paid by companies and stuff. So
yeah, I'm going to look. I've been following some of your comments, and I love all your suggestions. So I will definitely look into that today, because like I said, our first session that they're supposed to work with engineers is this Saturday. But yeah, no, I love looking into the Cox Communications and the IT departments in the area. Those are great ideas. I'll look into that. Thank you.
I may have some kind of input. We had to do a lot of contacting local companies for our mentorship program. And at first we had a lot of issues like you guys were having, where people were like, oh, that's wonderful, such a great idea. But they weren't committing. And I don't really know what finally got us there, but I think a lot of our success was contacting some bigger companies that already set aside volunteer hours for their employees. So I don't know if you guys have, like, we're lucky enough, we've got like State Farm and Country Financial and a couple other places like that around us that were very helpful. Also, a lot of our biggest support has come from people who are actually working in the local colleges close by. So we had a lot of people from like our Illinois State is just like literally 2 feet from our library, but then we have like Illinois Wesleyan that's in town, things like that. So I don't know if you've reached out to maybe some of their engineering programs. Maybe you could get a student that needs some work or something. Just a thought, if you're just looking for people who have some engineering insight.
Yeah, I'll look to see if maybe I just need to branch out a bit more, because so I'm in Independence, Kansas. It is like a tiny, tiny town, so that makes it a little harder. And the other issue we were facing with finding engineers, we do have a local community college, and I just found out that this year all their engineer professors quit, so we lost those people too.
Oh no, what Julia says. Oh no.
Yeah. But no, yeah, I'll try maybe branching out more and trying some of those. Thank you guys for all of your help.
Do you have any, do you have like a local 4-H or anything like that? I know that, and at least ours I know has branched out quite a bit into the STEAM areas, maybe an agricultural engineer. I don't know. I just, throwing stuff out there. I know it's hard when you're in kind of a tiny area.
Yeah. We do have a 4-H. I didn't realize that. 4-H is a new concept for me. This whole
Gotcha.
town is new to me.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I took this job like less than 2 years ago. So I'm like still in that whole culture shock of figuring things out.
Sure. Well, I'd say 4-H, if you haven't reached out to them, I came from a tiny town in Georgia, and they were always super helpful getting kids involved in things anyway. And now, we have a larger chapter now that I'm in Bloomington, Illinois. But they're extremely helpful. They're looking for things for kids to do. They're looking for ways to partner. So that may be a thing.
Okay. I'll star that one. Thank you.
This is Nikki. I think that's a really good point, because also I think the thing that we really want to encourage from a Google standpoint is that this isn't just about working at a Google, and that you don't have to necessarily move away from your hometown to a tech hub in order to work in computer science. So there's a lot of implications for the jobs that are. And so 4-H, I think, is a really great suggestion, and there are maybe some other creative ways for healthcare. There's a lot of tech involved in almost every industry now.
I see some others being posted too, like United Way and FFA, and I'm writing like all these down as we go. So this is what I'll be doing today. Thank you.
And somebody mentioned earlier about guidance counselors. Was that you, Sarah? And I don't think it's come up in this context, but I bet your guidance counselors also have connections to different community people who might be able to help.
And I'll post this, or I'll ask you, Linda, where is the appropriate place to post it. NCWIT, the National Center for Women in Technology, has a great resource called Counselors for Computing. So if your guidance counselor doesn't have that kit, they can get it for free, and you can encourage them to, because it's a great resource. And on that note, just to go back to the one of the questions that Mandy was asking, I had to step out, so I apologize. I was super interested in this, in the question about girls and targeting girls. We've got, Google's got some research on specifically what girls need. If you've been seeing the news lately, you'll also see that not including men in girl activities is a hot topic, or activities for women. As well, so something that we're sensitive to. But we do have a new report out on encouraging students to go into to study computer science that may be helpful, as well as an older one that's still really relevant about specifically why girls choose to study computer science. The short end is 95% of the factors of why a girl would choose to go to computer science are things we can control for. But there are some particular things that we need to do in order to do that. So I'll post both those studies. And I think it was Juan was saying, having that data and evidence can help people understand why you're doing activities in certain ways.
That's great. And Marika just posted the NCWIT. And Nikki, if you could post the Google studies in the chat, and then
sure, yeah.
That would be great. All right. What other hot troubleshooting topics, and either challenges you're having or successes you've had about you were struggling with something and really wanted to figure out how to fix it and you did, or how to work with it? Anybody? I love the FBI thing.
We've had a few times where things didn't go quite as planned. We were going to have one of our groups make videos with Powtoon, and then Powtoon wouldn't load, so we switched to stop motion, and that led to a great conversation about troubleshooting and finding different solutions. But then we also had another time where we were creating just really basic HTML and CSS cards, and myself and the other library staff who was doing it were not on the same page on where we were saving things, and that caused a bit of chaos that was a little bit harder to come back from. So that was more just not being on the same page on our end. But those are some troubleshooting on the fly things that we've had to do recently. I don't know.
I think that whole thing about communication with staff is huge, right? To make sure you're all organized the same way. Marika and I are really good at creating documents, not always thinking about where they need to go. Sorry, Marika, I'm telling everybody about our traumas, but having that communication is really important. Other things, I know also teens came up again in the chat, and also we've had some discussion on discussion forum about young kids, preschoolers, and families. Anything in those areas?
I think I'm presenting next week, so I don't want to talk a whole bunch. But some interesting things that we've run into that I kind of thought might be a problem, but I wasn't sure, and I think it might work itself out. Anyway, our mentorship program actually launched this week, so our first like 5 pairs met last night. And it was designed to be very open-ended. So basically I was like, okay, mentors, I'm pairing you as closely as I can with the information I have about what the kids are interested in. And then it's kind of a free-for-all. So they've been given the resources, suggestions, and sort of been told that the kids kind of are going to lead the sessions. So, of course, you know, you had some kids come in that were like, okay, I want to do this exactly, and, you know, let's work on that. But then I had a couple of kids that were like, like, I'm interested in technology. I said robotics, but I'm not sure that's really what I meant. So, you know, the mentors were like, okay, it's going to take a little more figuring out. So I'm thinking, you know, that was the first meeting. There's 8 total. So I think they'll find their path. But I didn't want to give them too much direction out front because I want it to be very child-led. But I'm interested to see how it pans out and how maybe we readjust how much direction I give them, you know, with it when we do it again. I'm just curious to see.
Yeah, that's a great way to start. I mean, you learn from that, right? That's a way to learn what's going to work and what's not going to work.
So I can say something about like recruitment, maybe around kids, because I think I've been thinking a lot about it and also supporting librarians on how to recruit the teams. And what I have come to emphasize to them, it is that it's really about the relationship, right? Like you have to have a relationship with the team for the program. Like it's all about, if you have a really good relationship and then they connect with you and they trust you, and then they will be more likely to come to the program. The other thing that I observe is that how they present the program to the team is really important, because sometimes they open up, or this is something I used to do also, and I've done in the past, but I learned through hardship and through experience, that usually is how you start the conversation with the team. If you say to them, hey, by the way, this is a technology program and you have to be committed to 5 weeks for 3 hours every Sunday or every like it's not a good sell. I'd rather start with like, hey, come hang out. We're going to have some snacks and then we're going to do a program on technology. You know, like you have to promote it the right way, I think, for the teens. And then it's more important for them to get there. And when you're not misleading them, but when you get there, when they get there, then you get them interested, right? They're going to connect. It's about the teens also. It's about the social space that you create for them and all of that. I mean, it's hard, but it's always a challenge, right? And I'm going to close with this. So one of the problems that we've been having right now is the teens are having a hard time getting to the central library for come and learn the workshop next week. And then, so we have to ask the librarian to meet them at the bus station or at the rail station and then bring them with themselves. So that's how we figure it out. Teens, it's hard for them to move from place to place.
Actually, that reminds me of something. Jeffrey, you, sorry, I'm calling you out, but you do a transportation thing with your youth, right? Am I right about that at Auction?
Yeah, we all of our game hackers, for the most part, unless they're already here, we do a pickup program, and basically we just have a transportation form that basically says you know, that the parent gives us permission to pick them up. I mean, we're in a rural area, so it makes it a lot easier. And for the most part, a lot of parents aren't home because they're working. So you know, it basically gives us more participants, but at the same time, you know, we're able to get that interest for those who wouldn't be able to make it to the library otherwise.
Thanks. Are other people doing things with transportation to help either or going out to other places instead of having the youth come to your and families come to your library?
For our teen workshop, we are actually going to the school. We're working with the schools, the high school actually, and they're letting us use their computer lab. And so we have to follow their rules and regulations, but that way, you know, a lot of teens are already at this high school, might as well just go to them so they don't have to worry about transportation.
Great, thank you.
We're doing a field trip eventually. So we didn't get to do it with the first round just because we ran out of time, but in between the first session and the second, we'll probably do a field trip either to MSU or a local tech company, and we'll provide transportation for that. We'll probably pick the kids up right after school and we'll charter a school bus or something with a driver and pick them up and drop them back off at the school at that time. But other than that, we're close enough to the middle school that the kids can walk, which is really helpful.
Juan, do the library staff have to have a permission slip or something to pick up kids?
Yes,
yeah,
we do. So they have a permission slip from their parents, but they cannot drive them. They cannot get in the car with the librarian.
Right.
They can just drive, they can come on public transportation.
Fascinating. Other challenges people are experiencing? Troubleshooting you've succeeded at? Nikki, I wondered, are you seeing anything? This is putting you on the spot a little bit, but are you seeing anything in those, the forms we're getting back about troubleshooting strategies?
That's a good question. Let me think about that for a second. Let me think about it.
Yeah. Marika, any thoughts? Go for it.
Well, I have something else about the transportation, and I was reading the chat, so I think I missed somebody saying that one way you got around the transportation was to go to the school or something, so I might have that wrong, but it made me think of another project that we work on with low-income housing residents, and the library taking the program to the public housing unit for that very reason, is that it's not easy or convenient to use the public transportation and or sometimes costly. So I was wondering among this group if that's something other people have done, not necessarily for this program, but just your library in general. Do you take your programs where the people might be?
We've done something like that before at our library. There's a skate park that is not too far from one of our branches, but too far for kids to walk. And the skate park was offering a free program for kids where they design their own skateboard, and they go over the different tips and, you know, the introduction to the sport. It was like a week-long thing that was completely free, but we didn't know how to get the kids from the library to the skate park. So we teamed up with the YMCA, and the YMCA actually, in the partnership that we have with them, did the transportation, so took care of the permissions and waivers on that end through theirs, because it's their bus. And they also brought one of their team groups as mentors to fulfill their mentorship and community service need for that team group. So that way the kids were able to get to the library, but we didn't have to, or to the skate park, but we didn't have to pay for transportation, and we didn't have to take on that responsibility for the transportation. The staff just met them at the skate park and then did the program there.
Right, that's cool. Yeah, I'm always curious how common that is.
Yeah, I wish Cheryl was on the call today because I know she would have.
I'm not sure, but I will add that I'm married to the YMCA team director for the association. So he was gonna do it no matter what, but the partnership actually turned out to be so beneficial that they are looking to want to keep it, because they need projects for their team groups to do.
Awesome.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm not sure that counts as community engagement, but good way to ensure you get support.
Well, and Nikki, I talked to I talked to Hai a while ago about working with housing authorities and some of the work I think Google's doing. I know other cities are doing that too, bringing different kinds of programs to housing authorities, computational thinking. Yes, I'm not making that up, am I?
No, that was actually my project, and unfortunately, with a reorg, it got sidelined for now. But that was before I was involved in library stuff, so I'm hoping that that can be one of the things we talk about for the coming year. And prior to Google, I did a lot of more place-based community development work. So I biased, but I think that's where it's at. In terms of your previous question, I'm not seeing a lot of strategies put into the feedback, and that was something that we had put in there, and I think realized that it might be a bit fuzzy for people and so maybe this is a good point to specifically call that out in the resources survey. Linda and Marika and I added a button in there, so when you're choosing what you'll be reviewing, you can select problem solving strategy. And this is where it's not necessarily a website or a curriculum or something you can just put an easy link to, but it's something that you've struggled with and maybe overcome. And you think it's important for other libraries to think about that. So it could be simple as, yeah, I'd like to do a problem solving strategy on transportation, and Jeff, you could put in how you provide transportation, stuff like that. So it's, even if you don't have a tangible resource to provide feedback on, these strategies are still really, really helpful.
Thanks, Nikki. And I see, and we can move into the question and answer period of just open questions people have about the project, etc. And you just asked about the submissions to the weekly reporting. I think last week Nikki said you could do them like send them back out to people quarterly, weekly. I can't remember what you said.
Yeah, if you just need your previous ones, it's just a one-time thing. You just need the ones that you submitted before we talked about saving them. Just send me an email and I can shoot those over. If you want me to just send it out to everybody, if you don't necessarily care about time, you just want to have a record of them, then I can just set every once a month or something like that to send it out. So I think it's up to the group of what's helpful.
And Juan is saying, do you have to do a tool review every week? No, but wait. Nikki, what are you gonna say?
No, And so there's, no, but, no, and Marika and Lyndon and Caitlin and I have been having a lot of discussions after these calls on everything that we're hearing from you and what you're submitting in the weekly reports, and Caitlin's conversations with you all. I think we're starting to get some exciting ideas of how all this information might be organized. What we're not getting as much of is then the specifics on resources and strategies. So I would encourage folks to actually submit as much as they can.
And I think as you, oh, go ahead. Who was going to say that? I think as you say that because we're hoping this cohort helps the rest of the world, is the more strategies we can have, and not just the tools and not just this is how I did it exactly, but like what didn't work and how did you deal with that what didn't work stuff, you all know that it's hard to talk about sometimes, but what doesn't work is, and then how you fixed it is so much better sometimes than, oh, this was great, and then you go and try it yourself and it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think we could all come up with endless examples of times when we've been part of a meeting or a committee or a working group or a project or something where you come up with some good ideas, even just on your own, and then you don't know if they ever, and actually they never make it beyond your walls. And so that was really the idea of this group, is we would get all of our brains in one place and discuss all this stuff, but that it won't just stay in our little group, that we really will be able to use my resources to organize this information and share it with every other library in the US. So as much as we can document and get that information down, then we can hopefully have other libraries a bit easier time starting their programs and moving along our continuum of being ready to code.
Yeah, and I think Marika is answering Juan about strategies, and Juan, that transportation thing about library staff walking to the bus or the light rail, that's a strategy for transportation.
Yeah, but I feel maybe we can like create buckets or narrow it down, because there's like strategies, I feel is like it's such a big thing, strategies. And then if I understand like, well, today or this week, I'm going to talk about strategies about recruitment, or our strategies about retention. You know, maybe that I can, because I feel that it's a little bit overwhelming for me if I start thinking about strategies, because there's so much, right? Strategies for curriculum development, or for building capacity with the librarians. I mean, so much, right? I'm just thinking that it might help.
Yeah, and just to remind, we are documenting the conversations we have on these calls. And then there's also the form that, so when you're not on the call, you think, oh, I was reminded of this, this week, or maybe you're just, your personality is to think about things before you speak. So after the call, you'll have all these thoughts about, oh, this is how what I'm doing could apply to these. So that's where you can then put it into the resource survey.
Gotcha.
So it's both. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And then I think John and other people had a question about what's going in, coming out. And you said that about that sounds weird, I know. You said that about the weekly surveys, but how everyone can see what's being submitted for the resources. Can you remind everybody about that too, Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, so the resource one, let's see, I guess, again, it's up to the group. So I don't know if we want to put this on the community practice for a vote or what. I have no problem sharing all of this, but I recognize it's your data. So I don't want to make it available to everybody if people would like to keep their submissions private. So let's think about how we can make that a democratic process of deciding what we want to do, and then maybe people could just opt in to having their submissions public or not, and same with the resource forms, or it might just be as simple as just taking out the library name if people are comfortable with that. Maybe we'll put something on the form.
Yeah, so I had a thought on that. I mean, you could just literally write, literally, I think, Nikki, I think that was probably the best, is if you don't put your library's name in the submission, then you prefer that your library isn't credited with it, or you put private at the end of your submission if you just want it to be part of the group and not be something very specific.
That's a good idea. I could just amend the survey form to say, to have just a checkbox and opt into sharing it or not. And then, because the way that the survey tool works is I have to just download it into a spreadsheet. So it's totally up to me of what is viewed or not. So I could just only include the info that people have opted in to include and not the library name.
Yeah, I mean, everything we do, we obviously want to be part of the toolkit, but obviously some are more wanting to actually give their own libraries information than others. So
yeah, and I also don't want people to feel like they're on the spot for then having to craft an elegant sounding response if they just want to jot some quick feedback and think, this one's, a rough draft. I don't want it to be public for now. That's
and I do think it's really helpful for people to know what library a lot of these ideas came from. Like, for us personally, we'd love it if other tribal libraries saw that, there are tribal libraries that are in fact doing these things, to actually get them excited about it. And the same goes for rural libraries, urban libraries, where the money might not be, or the people, the kids might not seem as interested. Well, those are possibilities. And so just thoughts. Sorry, I go in tangents.
No, I appreciate it. So Linda, Marika, and I will figure out how to adapt that. And then one more question that I'll answer while I have the mic. MCPL, I was surprised that I didn't see more options when I clicked I do not recommend this product. This is a couple people have mentioned this. So my goal was just to capture that information, that it's not something that you recommend, and to not then waste people's time. I should wait, but have you spend your time reviewing something that we're not going to include in the toolkit if enough people say that they don't recommend it. Because we don't want this to be a review site where people give thumbs up or thumbs down or whatnot. We just want to include only the helpful, positive information, because I don't want to say negative things about other folks' resources and stuff as well. But if people feel like they want to give more information, I guess I can put an optional box if people would like to have the option of saying why or why not. So why don't I just include that box as optional and make it clear that if you don't want to take the time, you don't have to.
That's awesome. By the way, Jeff, did you see you got a compliment on your shirt? People are loving your shirt. I wanted to mention before I forget that it was brought to my attention yesterday that the form you filled out for going to Midwinter that says you're getting money, it does not say this now, but it is Friday, February 9th and Saturday, February 10th. I think you all know that, but there was a mix up in the dates. So I don't want you there thinking you have to be there different days, but I think you all know that. Anything else? Marika, anything you want to make sure to say? No from Marika? No, I wasn't looking at your face. Sorry. Okay. Anything from any? Oh, go ahead, Marika, speak.
Yeah, I was just saying I'm practicing using mute, so I don't talk too much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. It's always great to hear. We'll continue this conversation on the discussion forum. And if you have a couple of people have posted their own challenges they're looking for feedback on, including who I said earlier today, that went, Kristen feel free to add. And we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, guys.